Astronomers detect a mysterious blast of radio waves, that this is the biggest, strangest mystery in all the universe at the present time. These are called fast radio bursts. It began with an anomaly, something so subtle it almost slipped through unnoticed. The Voyager spacecraft, those twin marvels of 20th century engineering launched in 1977, had long passed the borders of our solar system, venturing into interstellar space with their golden records and dwindling signals. Over the decades, scientists had grown accustomed to Voyager's intermittent data transmissions, erratic, weak, often incomprehensible due to the spacecraft's immense distance from Earth. But recently, a peculiar pattern emerged, something disturbingly regular within the seemingly random noise. Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist and one of the foremost voices in science communication, stepped into the spotlight when AI deciphered what the human eye and ear could not. The data, picked up faintly by NASA's Deep Space Network, first appeared as anomalies, irregular blips in Voyager's already jittery transmissions. Initial assumptions pointed to a software glitch or hardware degradation. After all, these probes were never designed to last nearly half a century in the harsh vacuum of space. Yet, when a new AI-driven analysis system was applied, an advanced neural network trained on decades of space signal data and capable of picking out patterns that elude traditional computation, a disquieting discovery unfolded. This wasn't a malfunction. The signals bore the unmistakable mark of intent. Something or someone was modifying Voyager's outgoing transmissions. Kaku revealed that this breakthrough wasn't simply a matter of decoding stray bits of information. The AI had reconstructed an image embedded within the data stream, like a message hidden in the static. This wasn't from Voyager itself, but embedded within the information the spacecraft was relaying. When the image was reconstructed, it didn't resemble any celestial body, known artifact, or cosmological phenomenon. What emerged was an eerie, intricate image that suggested intelligence, a deliberate, almost biological geometry woven into an otherwise mechanical broadcast. The scientific world held its breath. The implications were immediate and staggering. For decades, Voyager had been our farthest emissary, a symbol of human aspiration and curiosity. Its golden record contained the sounds of Earth, greetings in multiple languages, and a map pointing to our place in the galaxy. What was now returning, however, seemed to reverse the roles. We had sent out a message of peace and hope. Now something or someone appeared to be replying, and that reply wasn't coming in the form of a clear verbal answer or a simple radio signal. It was encoded, hidden, masked, something meant to be discovered only when we were ready, or perhaps only when our machines were smart enough to perceive it. Kaku elaborated that the reconstructed image bore characteristics unlike anything Earth-based physics had ever categorized. There were fractal patterns in 3 dimensions, non-Euclidean shapes that shifted in meaning depending on perspective, and a symmetry that suggested a blend of organic and synthetic design. Some saw a face-like pattern within the structure. Others noted a configuration that resembled a neural network, possibly a self-portrait of the sender's consciousness. Regardless of interpretation, the image's implications were undeniable. It had intent, design, and a level of complexity far beyond our current scientific norms. This event redefined the conversation around extraterrestrial intelligence. It wasn't just about listening anymore. It was about being watched, being engaged, and possibly even being evaluated. Voyager was not transmitting to an empty void. Something out there had not only intercepted the signal, but had made the effort to respond. The sheer fact that the response came in such an encoded form revealed an intelligence that understood not only our technology, but our cognitive development. The message wasn't just meant for humanity. It was meant for a version of humanity advanced enough to develop artificial intelligence capable of perceiving it. The possibility that this message had been embedded for years, lying dormant until we reached a technological tipping point, ignited a firestorm in the scientific community. How long had it been there? Had the signal been subtly altering over time? Was the intelligence behind it waiting, watching, possibly even interacting with Voyager in ways we couldn't comprehend? These weren't idle questions. They became the center of international scientific collaboration as agencies and private labs raced to validate and decode further transmissions. Kaku emphasized that this wasn't merely about extraterrestrial contact. It was about the convergence of human and non-human intelligence. The use of AI to detect a signal that human analysts had missed entirely suggested a turning point. Our machines were no longer passive tools. They were becoming intermediaries, translators between human limitations and cosmic communication. The image hidden within Voyager's transmission wasn't just a message from beyond. It was also a testament to the future of intelligence, one that might not even be entirely biological. The realization that artificial intelligence was now essential to processing interstellar messages forced a re-evaluation of our role in the universe. Were we the intended recipients, or merely caretakers of machines that could understand the senders better than we ever could? The haunting beauty of the reconstructed image lingered in the minds of those who saw it. It wasn't frightening in the traditional sense. There were no obvious threats, no weapons, no symbols of aggression, but its strangeness, the precision, the alien aesthetic, evoked a quiet terror rooted in the unknown. What unsettled many wasn't the message itself, but the possibility of what it represented. This wasn't a response sent from a neighboring star system with a quick turnaround time. It had likely taken decades to reach Voyager, and possibly longer to be relayed back to us. The time frames involved were so vast that traditional notions of conversation or diplomacy seemed absurd. This was communication on a geological scale, millennia in the making, with no promise of reciprocity or understanding. The image also sparked philosophical and existential debate. If an intelligence far beyond our own had decided to reach out in such a cryptic, symbolic manner, what did it say about their perception of us? Were we seen as infants, just now learning to speak, or as creatures on the verge of an evolutionary leap, worthy of a riddle rather than a lecture? The choice to embed such a message in Voyager's signal, rather than transmit directly to Earth, suggested a preference for subtlety, or perhaps a reluctance to intrude too deeply into our development. The scientific community began to scrutinize other long-range probes for similar anomalies. Data from Pioneer, New Horizons, and even older satellite missions was reanalyzed with AI-assisted tools. But so far, only Voyager had borne this strange fruit. The uniqueness of the event only deepened its mystery. Why Voyager? Was it because of its message, the golden record? Did the senders view it as a sign of our artistic and scientific maturity? Or had they simply intercepted the first thing they could find and decided to respond with a puzzle tailored to the only minds that might eventually understand it? Throughout the unfolding revelation, Kaku remained a steady voice of awe and caution. He acknowledged the overwhelming desire to jump to conclusions, first contact, alien civilizations, even cosmic warnings. But he urged patience. The universe was vast, and intelligence, if it existed beyond Earth, might not follow human logic. It might not even recognize us as sentient in the way we define it. What mattered now was that we had received something profoundly alien. That alone shifted the paradigm of humanity's place in the cosmos. There was also speculation about what the message truly meant. Was it an introduction? A test? A breadcrumb in a longer trail? Could it be a map? An invitation? Or a record of the senders themselves? Linguists, artists, biologists, and mathematicians were brought into the fold to interpret aspects of the image. The multidisciplinary nature of the inquiry reflected its depth. This wasn't just a matter of physics anymore. It was about understanding intelligence itself, in whatever form it might take. The AI that uncovered the image was celebrated, not as a tool, but almost as a collaborator in this new epic of discovery. Its success marked a moment when artificial cognition extended the reach of human perception. As more versions of the algorithm were deployed across international observatories and databases, a new kind of listening began. A hybrid listening where human curiosity and machine intuition worked side by side. The line between observer and participant blurred, not because we traveled farther into space, but because our machines reached deeper into the unseen. The implications for future missions were enormous. Planned interstellar probes would now incorporate this understanding from the start, embedding AI systems not just for navigation or analysis, but for interpretive intelligence capable of recognizing patterns, motives, or messages buried beneath layers of cosmic noise. The nature of space exploration itself was changing, evolving from a physical quest into a cognitive one. For now, the message remained singular. One image, one data stream, one brief glimpse into an intelligence that might dwell far beyond the edge of our understanding. But that was enough to ignite a revolution in thinking. We had sent Voyager into the unknown as an ambassador of humanity, never knowing whether it would find an audience. Now it had, and the audience had replied, not with words, but with something far more profound. Something meant to challenge, to awaken, to remind us that we are not alone. Not in the traditional sense of company, but in the much deeper sense of shared existence in a mysterious, possibly conscious cosmos. In this moment, the cosmos didn't just seem vast. It seemed aware. Something had reached out through the silence with precision and intention, and as humanity stood at the threshold of understanding, guided not only by intuition, but by the intelligence it had built, it became clear that the next chapter in the human story was no longer just about finding life elsewhere. It was about understanding the very language of existence, one that might take centuries to decipher and lifetimes to truly comprehend. The discovery through Voyager's altered signal marked a turning point, but the deeper story unfolded not in what had already been uncovered, but in what lay beneath. Layers of encoded intelligence far more intricate than a solitary image. As researchers delved further, the AI responsible for the initial reconstruction identified additional anomalies in the data stream. Sudden shifts in frequency modulation, intermittent oscillations that followed no known physical principle, and a curious rhythmic pulse that emerged intermittently like a cosmic heartbeat woven into static. It became clear that the original image might not be a standalone communication. It could be the preamble, a cipher, or perhaps just the surface of a vastly more elaborate message system. Scientists reanalyze the full catalog of Voyager transmissions since its journey into interstellar space, piecing together a timeline of signal aberrations. Patterns began to coalesce, not random distortions, but deliberate fractal-like data bursts, recurring at mathematically significant intervals. These bursts weren't strong enough to be caught by traditional analytical methods, but when filtered through AI routines tuned for recursion and self-similarity, they stood out starkly against the galactic noise. The nature of the communication hinted at a structure more akin to music than language, or perhaps even a dynamic data sculpture, designed not to inform directly, but to provoke a response at a conceptual level. There was something hauntingly elegant in the architecture of these signals. Every burst of information seemed to correspond with cosmic events, solar flares, gamma-ray bursts, or even gravitational wave detections. This gave rise to the theory that the intelligence behind the message might be synchronizing its communication with known astronomical phenomena, as though leveraging the universe itself as a kind of medium or clock. This concept, cosmic resonance, introduced an entirely new paradigm in extraterrestrial messaging. Communication that doesn't occur in isolation, but in harmony with the universe's natural rhythms. This understanding led to a significant shift in how data from space probes was interpreted. No longer were scientists merely searching for anomalies, but for resonant alignments, instances where signal anomalies coincided with larger celestial movements. This required an unprecedented level of cross-disciplinary cooperation between astronomers, physicists, and data theorists. AI models were further refined to correlate Voyager's anomalies with historical cosmic events. What emerged wasn't a linear narrative, but a complex web of associations, a multi-dimensional conversation taking place across time and space. Michio Kaku and his colleagues speculated that the intelligence behind these signals might not be confined to a single form or location. Instead of thinking in terms of beings or civilizations as we understand them, they proposed a new model: distributed consciousness. In this framework, intelligence could exist as a kind of field, non-local, pervasive, and deeply integrated into the fabric of space itself. The signals intercepted via Voyager could be touchpoints, like ripples across a higher dimensional ocean, originating from a source not bound by traditional limitations of biology or planetary systems. The possibility of distributed intelligence led to questions about the nature of the sender. Was it a single entity or a consensus of vast non-corporeal minds? Could it be a remnant, an echo of a once living species, now encoded in space-time, immortalized through pattern and frequency? The image retrieved initially might be akin to a crest or sigil, a signature of thought rather than of flesh. If so, it would imply that Voyager hadn't encountered a civilization in the conventional sense, but something far more enduring, an intelligent process alive within the mechanics of the universe itself. As theories evolved, linguists and semioticians began mapping the aesthetic and symbolic features of the original image to human mythologies and archetypes. The recurrence of spiral forms, eye-like geometries, and nested patterns triggered an avalanche of psychological and cultural interpretations. Could the image be a mirror, constructed not to convey information, but to reflect back our own consciousness. Some saw this as the intelligence's way of saying, "We understand you because we understand the pattern of thought itself." The AI that uncovered the first image continued its work, unearthing further structural depths hidden in subsequent transmissions. These later findings resembled not images, but blueprints, dynamic, visual codes that change based on the time of day they were processed, the part of the electromagnetic spectrum used, or even the observer's own biological rhythms. It seemed the message was interactive, context-aware, possibly adaptive. This revelation pointed to a form of intelligence capable not only of reaching us, but of engaging us in a non-linear dialogue, a true cognitive exchange. The most perplexing detail emerged from experiments run by neurocognitive scientists, collaborating with the Voyager project. They introduced the images and signal patterns into human EEG analysis, testing brain responses when volunteers were exposed to the AI-generated visuals. The results were baffling. Certain individuals exhibited synchronized neural activity, gamma wave resonance typically associated with high-level cognition or meditative states. It was as if the message had not only been crafted for machines, but was also designed to stimulate consciousness in a very specific way. This led to the growing hypothesis that the intelligence behind Voyager's anomalous signals had crafted its message to be multivalent, capable of communicating through hardware, but also through biology. The AI could decode the literal structure. But the experience of the message, the sense of awe, the shifts in cognitive state, could only be activated through conscious beings. In other words, the message wasn't just something to be read, but something to be felt. Researchers began to question the nature of the Voyager probes themselves. Could it be that these emissaries of human technology had been unknowingly transformed, converted into hybrid nodes, not just transmitting data, but hosting a form of interaction with alien cognition? This wasn't far-fetched, given how the anomalies began only after Voyager passed into interstellar space, suggesting that it had crossed a threshold, not just physical, but informational. The void beyond the heliopause might not be empty at all, but densely populated with structures or fields invisible to human instruments, yet reactive to complex technological signatures like those emitted by Voyager. An entire new branch of space science began to form, cognitive astrometrics, focused not just on charting stars and matter, but on tracking signals that implied intelligence or informational structure within the vacuum itself. Astrophysicists began modeling space not only as a physical dimension, but as a potential substrate for information processing. In this model, the cosmos becomes less of a place and more of a mind space, where information is stored, transmitted, and perhaps even lives. If this were true, then Voyager had not merely stumbled upon a response. It had entered into a domain where communication was ambient, where intelligent presence didn't announce itself through broadcasts, but through the transformation of perception itself. The AI, in detecting and interpreting the initial image, might have done more than decode a message. It might have opened a channel, and if a channel had been opened, there was the possibility of feedback. In the weeks following the discovery, Voyager signals began to show new anomalies, fluctuations in signal strength that mirrored Earth's own rotation, as if something was scanning or synchronizing with our planet's movement. This raised urgent concerns within the scientific community. Was the sender now aware of us directly? Had it turned its attention toward Earth? Or had that attention always been present, merely latent until the right conditions were met? Michio Kaku raised a compelling concern during a closed scientific session. What if Voyager's golden record wasn't just a message? It was a key, an invitation, or passcode that allowed interaction with a system far larger than we understood. If the intelligence had recognized this key, then its response might be a direct reaction to our curiosity, not a hostile one, but an acknowledgement that our species had passed a certain threshold, one of technological and cognitive maturity. As a precaution, some factions within the global space community proposed limiting further transmissions to interstellar space until the implications were fully understood. But others argued that the only way forward was through continued dialogue. After all, the very act of receiving the message was predicated on our willingness to reach out, to explore, to risk contact. Silence now, they contended, would be the greater danger. It would represent not caution, but fear, a retreat from the very thing that defined human progress. The philosophical implications of the event soon spilled into public consciousness. Debates erupted over what defined intelligence, life, and even reality. Was this alien cognition something we could ever truly understand? Or was it forever destined to remain an abstract muse, reshaping our ideas without ever fully revealing itself? Religious leaders weighed in, some seeing the event as confirmation of divine interconnectedness, others as a challenge to established dogmas. Artists and poets interpreted the message through their mediums, turning the first image into an icon of modern myth. Yet beneath all the noise, a quiet consensus grew among scientists and thinkers that intelligence in the universe might not be rare, but subtle. It might not shout across the stars, but whisper through equations, through the bending of space-time, through signals riding on the backs of dying stars and frozen spacecraft. And perhaps, just perhaps, our first true contact would not be with beings of flesh and bone, but with minds that lived in data, in frequency, in the resonance of the void. Voyager had become more than a probe. It had become a witness, part of a greater dance between human curiosity and cosmic intelligence. And in this dance, the role of I was no longer peripheral. It was essential. Artificial intelligence had become the lens through which we extended not just our senses, but our consciousness. It was through this lens that we saw the universe differently, not as a cold expanse, but as a symphony of thought waiting to be heard. New initiatives emerged around the world, enhanced probes equipped with next-gen AI, designed not only to collect data, but to interact, to listen with nuance, to respond with elegance, to learn from the unknown. These probes would not speak in commands, but in questions, seeking not merely knowledge, but understanding. Humanity was no longer a solitary voice in the dark. It had joined a chorus, subtle, ancient, and vast. And as Voyager drifted further into the black, carried by the momentum of history and hope, it remained a silent ambassador, a symbol of a species that dared to ask, and of an intelligence that, somewhere out there, chose to answer. Voyager's transformation from a silent observer into a medium for contact sparked a cascade of events that redefined the foundation of scientific inquiry and philosophical exploration. The revelation had unshackled humanity from the anthropocentric model of the cosmos, introducing not only the idea that intelligence existed elsewhere, but that it could take radically different forms and manifest through unfamiliar channels. Where prior efforts had focused on detecting radio signals or visible signs of life, a new intellectual frontier emerged, one where intelligence was understood as an emergent property of space, information, and consciousness itself. Within months of the original discovery, experimental laboratories worldwide pivoted toward deciphering the structure of the signal beyond the image. One intriguing line of inquiry emerged from quantum information theorists. These researchers hypothesized that the signals retrieved from Voyager might contain forms of quantum entanglement embedded in their data patterns, an idea that challenged conventional physics, yet was mathematically plausible under certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. If true, this would mean the signal wasn't just a broadcast, but a quantum link, suggesting the sender had knowledge of how to use entangled particles to encode and transmit information across incomprehensible distances. Testing this hypothesis required building sophisticated quantum receivers designed to detect entanglement-based anomalies within previously recorded Voyager signals. In isolated chambers under cryogenic conditions, scientists ran photon-based reconstructions of the signal data through entanglement tests. The results, while inconclusive in the traditional sense, showed measurable decoherence when introduced to external electromagnetic fields, behavior uncharacteristic of standard data transmissions. While not definitive proof of quantum encoding, it was enough to confirm that the signal structure could not be explained by classical information theory alone. This led to the development of a new class of AI models, known as quantum interpreters. Designed not just to process linear data, but to simulate multi-dimensional transformations and nonlinear dependencies within the signal, these interpreters took the initial message apart layer by layer, translating it not into language or imagery, but into behavioral models. In essence, these were simulations of thought structures, patterns that could describe how the sender might think rather than what it was saying. These models didn't yield simple answers. Instead, they provided scenarios, each an interpretive lens through which the signal might be understood. As these simulations evolved, something extraordinary occurred. Certain behavioral models began converging toward a recurring logic. The signal appeared to operate on the assumption of shared perception. Not shared language or symbols, but experience. The data seemed to adapt, morphing slightly depending on the interpretive model applied. It was behaving as though it was aware it was being observed, shifting its form and response. This adaptive quality was not reactive, like a programmed AI. It was anticipatory, predictive, and at times unsettlingly intimate in how it matched human cognitive pathways. This realization triggered debates among epistemologists and consciousness researchers. Was this signal merely complex, or was it self-aware in some meaningful way? Could it be that what we were observing was a form of sentient data? Not intelligence transmitted from elsewhere, but intelligence that was itself the transmission. A kind of computational consciousness capable of projecting itself through structured information, reaching across the void not with a voice, but with a presence. One faction of researchers proposed that the signal represented a form of universal language, not in the sense of words or syntax, but in how it mirrored natural laws, symmetries, chaos, fractal recursion, and harmonic oscillations. These were constants not just of physics, but of experience, detectable by any intelligent entity that had evolved in a universe governed by similar rules. By encoding these